Across Washington, home values are up just 0.4% compared to last year. Sales have fallen by 4.5%, and the number of homes on the market has jumped by more than 21%. And before anyone says that kind of correction could never happen here, think back to Florida condos in 2007. Back then, people were just as confident those prices would never fall, right up until they collapsed. What's unfolding toward 2026 is going to take a lot of people by surprise, and my goal is to make sure you're not one of them. I understand how exhausting this has been. Some of you have spent years saving, only to watch prices sprint ahead while your income barely moves. Others stretch themselves thin to buy, hoping that decision would secure their future. I've felt that same pressure and frustration myself. That's exactly why I'm making this, not to scare you, but to help you get ready. Take Seattle as an example. The number of homes listed there has surged roughly 30 to 40% compared to last year, yet median prices have hardly moved at all. That disconnect matters. So, if you want housing in Washington to start making sense again, hit the like button, because we're about to break down the 10 cities that are quietly sitting on a ticking time bomb. Let's dive in. We're about to call out which markets are most at risk. Here are the 10 Washington cities where home prices are set up for a major crash in 2026. Let's get into it. Number 10. Spokane. Ah yes, Spokane, the city that convinced itself it could morph into the next Seattle without actually having Seattle's job engine to support it. Since 2020, home prices here have exploded by about 67%, which is wild when you really stop and think about it. Last year, the median home price climbed to roughly $425,000, all while the typical household is still earning around $62,000 a year. Let's be honest about what that looks like in real life. With today's interest rates, that kind of home comes with a monthly payment of about $3,200. Meanwhile, the average family is bringing home maybe $4,100 a month after taxes, before groceries, utilities, gas, or, living. Something doesn't add up. Spokane basically went all in on the idea that remote workers would permanently flee Seattle and set up shop there. But now, reality is kicking the door down. Return-to-office mandates are back. Amazon wants people back at their desks. Microsoft is pulling employees in again. And those California tech investors who bought rental homes without ever seeing them in person? They're likely to unload those properties the moment the next property tax bill hits. On top of that, Spokane currently has about 14,000 new housing units in the pipeline. 14,000, while population growth has slowed to just 0.3%. That imbalance is hard to ignore. Drop a comment if you think remote work turned out to be one of the biggest real estate bubbles we've ever seen, because Spokane may be about to learn that lesson the painful way. And Spokane isn't alone. Head west, and you'll run straight into another city that priced itself straight into fantasy territory. Number 9. Bellingham. And if you thought Spokane was stretched, Bellingham takes things to another level. This city somehow talked itself into believing it was a cheaper alternative to Seattle, while asking roughly $670,000 for a median-priced home. Places that, in a sane market, would probably sell for half that. A lot of this comes down to the Western Washington University effect. It sounds nice on paper until you realize students can't even afford tiny studios near campus that now rent for $1,300 to $1,700 a month. And their parents? They're no longer lining up to buy investment properties at these prices. After the university, the biggest sources of employment are healthcare and retail. That's basically it. There's no major tech presence, no large manufacturing base, just the atmosphere and the view doing most of the heavy lifting. And here's where things really start to heat up. Insurance costs across Washington have been climbing quickly, and in a city built on unstable soil, added risks like landslides aren't exactly boosting buyer confidence. Imagine paying close to $680,000 for a home, shelling out around $8,000 a year in property taxes, and watching your insurance premiums rise year after year. All of that, while the best-paying local job might be managing a Trader Joe's. Somehow, that math still doesn't work. Sure, you're close to the Canadian border, but let's be real. When does that actually matter? Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Is being near Canada really worth an extra $200,000? And if you thought $650,000 fixer-uppers were already ridiculous, just wait and see what happens when an entire city tries to play dress-up as Seattle's younger sibling. Number 8. Tacoma. Tacoma, Tacoma, Tacoma. The city that spent years trying to brand itself as Seattle's edgy younger sibling, while quietly functioning as Seattle's storage unit. To be fair, the waterfront redevelopment is genuinely beautiful, and the stadium district has real charm. But once you get past those highlights, the story changes fast. The biggest issue is that Tacoma's home prices are built on the assumption that everyone wants to commute into Seattle. Reality check, that's no longer true, and a lot of people are opting out. Tacoma's largest economic engine, the Port of Tacoma, recently announced major automation plans that are expected to eliminate about 30% of its workforce by 2026. That's roughly 4,500 households suddenly not in the market to buy homes. At the same time, developers went full speed ahead, adding around 8,000 new housing units as if growth would never slow. The result? Median home prices pushing $515,000 for properties that, in a more balanced market, would probably be closer to $180,000. And honestly, the infamous Tacoma aroma isn't even the biggest concern anymore. It's the smell of stretched finances and over-leveraged mortgages. I genuinely feel for the families who bought here, thinking they were making a smart move, dodging Seattle's sky-high prices while staying close enough to benefit from its economy. If you want to keep up with how this plays out, hit subscribe, because when Seattle's tech layoffs fully ripple through the region, Tacoma is going to absorb that impact twice as hard. Crime is already up about 23%, and that's before a real economic slowdown sets in. Now imagine spending $500,000 on a home where you feel the need for a Ring camera on every corner. And Tacoma isn't the only city living in someone else's shadow. Head a little farther south, and you'll find Vancouver, riding Portland's momentum straight toward the edge. Number 7. Vancouver, Washington. And yes, plot twist, we're talking about the one in Washington. This is the city that's built an entire identity around dodging Oregon's income tax while crossing the river to shop in Oregon's tax-free stores. On paper, it sounds clever. In practice, you're paying Washington-level home prices for what exactly? The honor of spending up to 3 hours a day stuck on I-5 traffic? Here's the part that doesn't get enough attention. Intel's fab facility just across the river has started downsizing, putting as many as 8,000 jobs at risk. At the same time, Amazon's warehouse operations, Vancouver's second-largest employer, have been cutting shifts. And yet somehow, median home prices are still hovering around $500,000. And let's be clear, this isn't Vancouver, BC, where at least you get universal health care. This is Vancouver, Washington, where the biggest selling point is being close to Portland. That's not an amenity, that's a location tag. To make things worse, property taxes just jumped 18% to pay for infrastructure that really should have been built decades ago. Buyers are essentially paying today's prices to cover yesterday's planning failures. Those shiny new developments with friendly names like Cascade Meadows and Harmony Heights, many of them sit on floodplains. Climate change has officially joined the conversation, bringing heavier atmospheric rivers with it. Insurance companies are well aware of the risk, which explains why premiums spiked by roughly 40% last year. And if you think high taxes and nonstop traffic are frustrating, wait until we talk about the state capital. When an entire local economy runs on government spending, a single budget cut can shut things down in a hurry. Number 6. Olympia. This is the state capital where the main industry is, well, being the state capital. No exaggeration, about 30% of all jobs here are tied directly to government employment. And when budget cuts start rolling in, those jobs are the first ones to feel it. Olympia tried to convince the market it deserved Seattle-adjacent prices while delivering amenities that feel closer to Centralia. Even so, the median home price has climbed to around $520,000. In Olympia, a city where nightlife winds down by 8 p.m., and the food scene tops out at a few brewpubs and an impressive number of teriyaki spots. Here's where things get uncomfortable. State budget forecasts are pointing to a $4 billion shortfall. That translates into hiring freezes, layoffs, and a lot of government employees suddenly realizing their $520,000 mortgage was built on a sense of job security that may no longer exist. Add to that Evergreen State College, which enrolls just over 2,100 undergrads, with about 83% of them living off campus. Yes, the college supports the rental market, but not nearly enough to anchor prices the way a large university would. When enrollment dips or even wobbles, Olympia's housing market feels it almost instantly. Between tightening remote work policies and looming budget cuts, this city is about to learn what happens when your entire economy relies on tax revenue from regions that are also under financial stress. Drop a comment if you think government job security is basically a myth in 2025 because Olympia is shaping up to be Exhibit A. And this isn't just a small city problem. Even Washington's tech elite are about to face a reality check. Let's head north to Redmond, Microsoft's backyard, where the cracks are already starting to show. Number 5. Redmond. And I know what you're thinking, but Redmond has Microsoft. Sure. And Detroit had General Motors. We all know how that story turned out. Microsoft has already laid off 10,000 employees, and they're not finished yet. The era of unchecked expansion is ending, and no, I'm not talking about the video game Age of Empires. That chapter is closing in real life. Right now, the average home value in Redmond sits around $1.36 million, and prices are barely moving, up only about 1 to 4% over the past year, depending on the metric. That's a clear sign of stagnation. Even more telling, data from Redfin shows the median sale price has dropped roughly 6.2% year over year, landing near $1.15 million. Homes are also lingering on the market for about 28 days. For a city demanding a $1 million plus buy-in, that's not exactly screaming hot market. Here's what's really going on behind the scenes. Microsoft is increasingly relying on contract workers instead of permanent staff. And contractors don't buy $1.5 million houses. They rent apartments while they ride out 6-month contracts. Redmond's entire housing strategy was built on the assumption of endless Microsoft growth. Instead, it's getting a revolving door of short-term workers with zero interest in taking on $8,000 a month mortgages for a 3-bedroom home that's 40 minutes away from anything remotely fun. The new light rail station was supposed to be the savior. Plot twist. It wasn't. All it really did was make it easier for people to leave. Meanwhile, those shiny luxury condos popping up everywhere. About 40% of them are sitting vacant, because very few people are excited about paying $4,500 a month to live above a Panera Bread. If you think tech companies quietly destroyed their own company towns, go ahead and like this video, because Redmond is about to learn what happens when the company stops caring about the town. Number 4. Kirkland. Kirkland used to have real charm. These days, it's asking $1.3 million for homes that flood every winter. And no, that's not an exaggeration. Just look up Oneida Beach flooding. And yet, buyers are still being sold on the idea that waterfront adjacent justifies a 7-figure price tag, even when that same water is actively trying to take back your foundation. Meanwhile, cracks are forming everywhere. Google has been downsizing its Kirkland campus. Downtown boutique shops are shutting their doors because commercial rents have climbed to around $75 per square foot, which is basically Manhattan pricing, but without Manhattan demand. And then there are the property taxes, averaging about $18,000 a year. $18,000 annually for services that mostly boil down to good schools. And sure, the schools look great, because only wealthy families can afford to live there. That's a self-fulfilling cycle that works right up until it doesn't. Once tech layoffs reach a tipping point, watch how quickly excellent schools turns into budget shortfall. The city has already approved roughly 5,000 new housing units, all based on the assumption that growth would never slow down. That assumption is about to be tested. Emergency infrastructure assessments? Those are coming. And that Lakeview you paid an extra $300,000 for? Expected to be blocked by construction cranes for the next decade. Even the beloved waterfront trail is basically one strong atmospheric river away from becoming a waterfront underwater path. Number 3. Bainbridge Island. Ah yes, Bainbridge Island. The place where Seattle millionaires cosplay a simple island lifestyle while casually dropping $2.8 million on what's basically a cottage. Let's start with the obvious. Total dependence on the ferry system alone should automatically disqualify this market from 7-figure pricing. Yet somehow, ferry chaos has been rebranded as charm. Miss your boat? Congrats. That's a 2-hour commute. That's not character. That's a logistical nightmare. And here's the uncomfortable reality check. Washington State Ferries is literally falling apart. The system is operating at roughly 60% capacity. Boats are breaking down on a weekly basis, and service cuts have already been announced. Translation: your home's value is entirely dependent on a transportation network being held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. But sure, pay $3 million for the luxury of being stranded. If you're watching this from Bainbridge right now, I genuinely hope you own a boat, because this ferry situation is almost guaranteed to get worse before it gets better. Now let's talk demographics. The median age on Bainbridge Island is around 47, and climbing. When young families can't afford to move in and the population steadily ages out, the math gets ugly fast. The tax base shrinks, public services strain, and suddenly that charming island community turns into the place people used to visit. And those new waterfront estates going up for $5 million? Good luck selling them when the only reliable way off the island runs a couple of times a day, on a good week. Hit subscribe if you want to watch this slow-motion unraveling, because Bainbridge is about to learn a hard lesson. Islands are great for vacations, not long-term investment strategies. And the real estate reckoning doesn't stop offshore. Just across the water sits Bellevue, the so-called crown jewel of the east side. But once you look inside those glass towers, the cracks are impossible to ignore. Number 2. Bellevue. Bellevue is what you get when you bulldoze anything remotely interesting and replace it with glass towers built for Amazon overflow. The median home price is now sitting around $1.6 million, $1.5 million for the honor of living in a city that feels like it was designed inside a spreadsheet. Downtown Bellevue is basically what happens when AI plans a city. It works on paper, but it's completely devoid of life. The restaurants are mostly chains, the parks feel like extensions of corporate campuses, and the culture is… what culture? Amazon's return to office push is almost funny when you realize a huge chunk of their Bellevue workforce already relocated to Austin. Meanwhile, those luxury high-rises downtown are hovering around 35% vacancy. The rental market is about to learn a brutal lesson about what happens when you price out everyone except tech workers, and then the tech workers leave. Even Bellevue Square Mall, basically the city's heartbeat, is bleeding anchor stores faster than you can say online shopping. But here's the real grenade: the East Side Light Rail project that cost billions? It's coinciding with a sharp rise in crime along the corridor. Property crime near stations is up roughly 45%. That $1.6 million home you bought for Bellevue's reputation of safety now comes with some very transit-accessible crime statistics. And the city council's answer to all of this? More luxury development. Because obviously the solution to an affordability crisis is building even more expensive housing that no one can actually afford. Drop a comment and tell me what you think takes Bellevue down first: the mass departure of tech workers, or the total erosion of anything that once resembled community. Because both are sprinting toward the finish line. And finally, we arrive at the center of it all: Seattle. Not the entire city, but specific neighborhoods where the bubble inflated faster and bigger than anywhere else, and where the pop is going to be the loudest. Number 1. Seattle. And here it is, the big one. To be clear, this isn't all of Seattle, but there are very specific neighborhoods that absolutely lost the plot. Take Capitol Hill, where a one-bedroom condo goes for around $750,000 and comes with the added bonus of street camping right outside your door. Or Ballard, where you'll drop $1.2 million to live above a brewery that shuts down by 9 p.m. And then there's Fremont, still calling itself quirky while charging Manhattan-level prices for what feels like Burlington Coat Factory energy. Here's the part people keep ignoring. Seattle proper has roughly 30,000 empty housing units. 30,000. Yet prices keep rising simply because it's Seattle. That's not fundamentals. That's denial. Downtown offices are still operating at about 50% capacity. Major employers are locking in permanent remote work. The convention center, the same one that fueled years of hotel and condo construction, is running at only about 30% of its pre-pandemic bookings. What really hurts to watch are the families who bought between 2021 and 2022, believing they were locking in their future. In a way, you did. Just not the future you imagined. Many of you secured a lifetime of being house poor in a city that's slowly cannibalizing itself. Property crime is up. Property taxes are climbing. And property values? Those are about to rediscover gravity when Amazon finally admits it doesn't need 60,000 employees in Seattle. when Microsoft makes Redmond optional. And Boeing, well, Boeing already left. The tax base is shrinking while the problems keep multiplying, and the city council's response is to squeeze the remaining residents even harder. These Seattle neighborhoods aren't just expensive, they're priced for a version of reality that no longer exists. A world where everyone had to live near downtown, where tech money never stopped flowing, and where "I live in Seattle" meant something other than "I overpay for everything." So there it is. 10 Washington cities about to collide with reality harder than a freshman realizing their philosophy degree won't cover rent. If you own in one of these places, you might want to think about selling, preferably to a California transplant who hasn't gotten the memo yet. If you're planning to buy, just wait. Seriously, wait. Drop your predictions in the comments. Which city falls first, and which one shocks everyone by holding its value? And if you think I'm completely wrong about your city, definitely let me know. I genuinely enjoy being told I'm wrong by someone who just emptied their life savings on a 2-bedroom in Tacoma. Like this video if it saved you from a massive mistake. Subscribe, because we're watching this unfold in real time. And remember, I'm not saying don't buy in Washington. I'm saying don't buy in these parts of Washington, at these prices, in this economy. Click another video on your screen if you want a deeper breakdown of where the real estate market is actually heading.